What if we've completely misunderstood Victor all this time? For years, From fans have been asking the same question. Why do the monsters never seem interested in him? Why was he the only child left alive after the massacre that destroyed his entire community? And perhaps most importantly, why has Victor managed to survive for decades in a place where even the strongest adults struggle to stay alive? Most viewers naturally assume Victor is special. Maybe he has some kind of protection. Maybe the boy in white watches over him. Maybe the monsters are afraid of him. But a fascinating fan theory suggests something much darker. What if Victor isn't alive because he escaped a cycle? What if he's alive because the cycle needs him? And if that's true, then the scariest possibility isn't that Victor survived. It's that he was never supposed to die. Before getting into the theory, it's worth quickly looking at what the whole video is really about. This isn't simply a theory about why Victor survived. It's a theory about the entire structure of Fromville. It attempts to explain the monsters, the mysterious cycles, the importance of children, how Sara's disturbing mission to kill Ethan is connected to their escape plan, and why Victor has become increasingly emotional in recent episodes. Most importantly, it raises a terrifying possibility that Ethan may be walking down the exact same path Victor once did. And if you're obsessed with unraveling the mysteries of From, theories, and episode breakdowns every week, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment now. I make this video all by myself, and most importantly, subscribe if you love your mother.
Just kidding.
At the center of the theory is one simple but horrifying idea. According to some fans, every cycle ends with one surviving child. That child becomes something like an anchor, preserving the nightmare until the next cycle begins. In this interpretation, Victor wasn't simply the lucky survivor of his generation. He was the child the town intentionally preserved. And now, Ethan may be filling the same role. But once fans started looking at Victor through this lens, several strange details suddenly began to feel much more important. Because when you really think about it, the monsters have had countless opportunities to kill Victor. Unlike everyone else, Victor often wanders around the town with surprisingly little fear. He spends time outside alone. He travels through dangerous areas. He survived situations that should have ended badly, yet the creatures never seem particularly interested in him. That doesn't necessarily mean they're afraid of him. Some fans believe something far more disturbing may be happening. What if they simply need him alive? If Victor truly serves some larger purpose within the cycle, then killing him might actually interfere with whatever keeps Fromville functioning. In other words, the monsters may not be sparing Victor out of kindness or respect. They may simply be preserving something essential. And suddenly, Victor's survival starts looking less like a miracle and more like a prison sentence. This theory also changes the way many fans look at Sara's infamous mission to kill the boy. When Sara first received those messages, most viewers assumed the voices were simply evil. But some fans have wondered whether the situation might be more complicated. What if the voices weren't all coming from the same source? After all, Sara herself once told Boyd that one of the voices sounded different from the others. That small detail has led some viewers to believe that multiple entities may be speaking through her. Some fans still believe everything traces back to the man in yellow. His later references to sacrifice certainly make that possibility difficult to ignore. But others think at least some of the voices could belong to previous victims trapped within the cycle itself. If that interpretation is correct, then perhaps those voices believe that sacrificing Ethan was the only way to break the nightmare permanently, not because they were evil, but because they believed there was no other solution. Of course, that doesn't make Sara's actions justified. It simply adds another layer of tragedy to the situation. Because if these trapped souls really exist, they may have been desperately trying to save everyone in the only way they understood. Another interesting branch of the theory focuses on the repeated patterns between Victor and Ethan. The similarities are hard to ignore. Both are imaginative children. Both seem unusually connected to the mysteries of the town. Both communicate with strange figures that other people can't see. Both express themselves through drawings, and both appear to arrive during major turning points in the story. Fans have also noticed that Victor himself seems increasingly concerned about Ethan. At first glance, it looks like simple affection. Victor understands what it means to be a frightened child in Fromville, and naturally he wants to protect Ethan. But some viewers think there may be something deeper beneath his behavior. Victor often speaks to Ethan with an unusual mixture of sadness and urgency. It's almost as if he's trying to prepare him for something, almost as if he fears history may repeat itself. And perhaps that's why Victor has become so emotional recently. Maybe he's beginning to understand the truth about his own survival. Or maybe he simply fears Ethan will experience the same loneliness that defined his own life. One particularly heartbreaking theory suggests that every cycle eventually reaches the same impossible decision. According to this interpretation, there is always a mother figure. At some point, she learns that sacrificing her son may be the key to ending everything. Meanwhile, someone like Jade desperately searches for another solution. Hope appears. An escape seems possible, but ultimately the mother refuses, because no mother wants to sacrifice her child. And perhaps that refusal causes the cycle to reset. Everyone dies. One child remains behind. And years later, the surviving child grows into another Victor. It's a devastating idea because it transforms Victor from the miracle survivor into something much sadder, a victim left behind. Not saved, not chosen, simply abandoned. Of course, not every fan agrees on how Christopher fits into all of this. Victor's memories make one thing very clear. Miranda specifically warned him to hide somewhere Christopher couldn't find him. That detail creates an important problem. If Christopher wanted to protect Victor, then why hide from him? Because of that contradiction, many viewers believe Christopher himself wasn't necessarily the threat. Instead, whatever controlled him may have been using Christopher as a tool. In other words, Christopher may have already fallen under the influence of whatever manipulates people inside Fromville. If that's true, then Miranda's warning makes perfect sense. She wasn't protecting Victor from Christopher the man, she was protecting him from whatever had taken control of Christopher. And that interpretation feels much more consistent with everything we've seen. Then there's the mystery of the boy in white. Few characters inspire more theories than this strange figure. Some fans believe he may actually be the first surviving child from the original cycle. Others think he represents something much larger. But perhaps the most intriguing clue involves his appearance. Victor himself seems surprised that the boy in white had changed. For years, the boy in white appeared almost frozen in time, but now something is different, and that raises an important question. Why would he age? Could he really be the original survivor? Or does his changing appearance suggest that something fundamental about the cycle itself is changing? At this point, nobody knows, but Victor's reaction suggests that whatever is happening, it isn't normal. The mystery becomes even more complicated when we consider the possibility that multiple forces are operating inside Fromville. The screams Sara heard near the bottle tree, the different voices she described, the guidance provided by the boy in white, and the terrifying influence of the man in yellow, all suggest that there may not be a single mastermind behind everything. Instead, there could be competing supernatural forces with very different goals. Perhaps one side wants the cycle to continue. Perhaps another side wants to destroy it. And perhaps the people trapped inside the town are caught in the middle of a war they don't even understand. But among all these mysteries, the most heartbreaking implication concerns Victor himself. For decades, Victor probably believed he was the lucky one, the survivor, the miracle, the child who somehow escaped. But what if he never escaped? What if his loneliness wasn't an accident? What if spending decades alone wasn't random? What if his survival wasn't a blessing? What if his survival was his purpose? Suddenly, everything changes. Victor's tragedy becomes much darker, because maybe he wasn't rescued. Maybe he was preserved. Maybe the monsters never ignored him because they feared him. Maybe they ignored him because they couldn't afford to lose him. And if that terrifying possibility is true, then Ethan's growing importance becomes even more frightening, because Ethan is starting to resemble Victor more and more. Both boys draw. Both see things others cannot. Both share strange connections to the mystery surrounding the town. And both seem deeply connected to the boy in white. Perhaps those similarities mean nothing, or perhaps they're warning signs. Because if this theory is right, then Fromville doesn't simply kill people. It leaves one child behind, one lonely survivor, one living reminder that the nightmare isn't over. Victor spent decades believing he was the lucky one, the survivor, the miracle, the child who somehow escaped. But what if he never escaped? What if his loneliness wasn't an accident? What if spending decades alone wasn't random? What if his survival was his purpose? Suddenly, everything changes. Victor's tragedy becomes much darker, because maybe he wasn't rescued.